Today I'm going to share some unusual stories of little people that don't quite fit the normal narrative. Check it out.
Hello everyone. I'm Kang. And Kutavitak has asked me to talk a little bit about little people. I was trained by a Nepalese shamaness. And in Nepal, at least in the rural areas, supernatural creatures are a lot more common in people's everyday lives. I remember my teacher telling me about when she was a little girl and she would travel on this short path through the mountains, and often a Bigfoot family would be traveling in the opposite direction, and she knew them very well. And they would just pick her up over their heads and put them behind her, and she would go on her way and they would go on theirs. And my teacher talks about so many different type of beings, it's hard to narrow it down. I don't even know some of the stories I know until I get to talking with Quitavitak. And he's very interested in little people. And one of the stories that I have is about a Buddhist monk that I knew who recently passed on about 2 years ago. He, as a young man, had a great thirst for knowledge. And leprechauns are a type of little people. And he did all the rituals, and he used all the substances that are required to call leprechauns. And he got one singular leprechaun, to become his basic personal guardian. And like a lot of little people, they have access to great amounts of ancient knowledge. And this Buddhist monk that I knew was able to ask this being any question that ever came to mind, and he would get the answer. The problem was that the leprechaun would never shut up. It would talk day and night, every day of the week. And I guess after a few years, he couldn't take it anymore. So he bound this leprechaun onto a type of effigy, put the effigy on a small little boat, and then set the boat off on a local river near a lake. And when it got out into the middle of the lake, he did all these mantras, which would send the leprechaun back to its realm from which it came. I think that's a funny story about how sometimes you can wish to know all the things in all the worlds, and then there's just something so annoying that comes with that mystical knowledge that you just want to get rid of it. I've had a few encounters with little people. None were intentional. It was all interacting with some other spiritual leader that was visiting. Little people seem to be more connected to the elements of earth, fire, and metal. And there are so many different types of little people. Names I don't even have, beings I don't even have the names of. But there are dwarves, elves. I have a lot to do with the little people of Indonesia, as my teacher's husband was from Indonesia and he was a shaman. Gosh, there are so many types. And the thing about these beings is that they exist on the earthly realm some of the time. So wherever they come from, they're only here part of the time. Maybe they just come here to fill up on a certain energy that's only here. But all of them have the ability to control how beings see them. And like all beings of supernatural capacity, they want nothing to do with humans. They want nothing to do with us. We never, as a species, keep anything pristine. We never keep anything beautiful or allow it to be as it really is. We're not willing to pay the collective price of keeping a species on the planet. For example, any predator that eats a farmer's livestock. We don't act as a collective species to preserve bears or to preserve wolves. So if that's what we do with our terrestrial beings, we know that we will do even worse to supernatural beings who have skills far beyond our own. Now, I've been trying to teach Quitavitak how to interact with these beings, but he doesn't have time to come and see me, and he would need to spend a couple of months training with me. But I hope one day that he'll be able to do it on his own. I look forward to talking to you all, and I look forward to working with Quitavitak on his future projects. Talk to you later.
In Alaska, I heard a story about a kid that was taken, a little boy. He was taken by little people. And when he was taken underground, he described glowing rocks. These strange little elf-like or goblin-like people speaking in a really strange language. There's like thousands of them. And it was huge vaulted ceilings with a lot of rocks that were glowing. And they had to let them go because too many people were looking for them. And a lot of these old stories, they say that the little people only take kids that are abused or mistreated, so they'll kind of rescue them. But this kid had loving grandparents, so they took him back. Here's a story I found about a little people encounter in Australia, and they describe similar glowing rocks. Paul of South Africa has a story that's equally strange. This experience took place in 1986 in Durban, South Africa, at the Mangrove Swamps Nature Reserve at approximately 6 p.m. On this day, Paul tells us he had 5 friends set off on a hike off the main trail in the swamp. We walked for about 10 minutes when the swamp gave way to a clearing with rock formations, similar to that of a small natural amphitheater, he says. There were illuminated firelights all around this amphitheater. Directly in front of me was a small person who was just over 3 feet in height. He looked directly at me and pointed at me in surprise. At this point, the entire group of friends had caught up to Paul. We looked around and witnessed little people sitting on illuminated rocks, formations, and others who were interacting with each other. He continues. The lights and forms we saw were of an ethereal light, clearly less dense than the light we were familiar with. I estimated there to be between 20 and 30 of these little people. We were shocked and frightened by this phenomenon we experienced. The experience only lasted about 10 seconds for the friends, but seemed to play out as if in slow motion. We turned and ran as fast as we could towards our vehicle, Paul says. On arriving, we tried to make sense of what we witnessed. We returned to the spot and saw nothing but bush. No lights, no little people, no rock formations. Just bush. So the transparent narrative seems to be common among the little people, like how the thing slowly disappeared in that last story. Here's some other unusual stories about little people. I don't know if what I saw was a little person, but when I was younger, around 7 or 8, these little shadows or elves, maybe the size of a pinky, would come out into my room. I can't remember the feelings I had. I wouldn't go to bed with the lights out, and I insisted that my parents stay with me in my room until I fell asleep. I think they thought I was crazy or something, but I know what I saw. Most of the time, they walked on my window, but then when I turned to the other direction, they would jump in front of me as if they wanted me to see them. I don't think I was all that scared, but I can remember clearly what they looked like. Over a period of time, they disappeared. I think it lasted a year. Also, I remembered that when I wanted them to go away, I would ask them to leave. If they didn't, then I would try to smack them with my hand, but they would disappear before I could. I don't recall them talking. It was strange, but I know what happened. In Stowmarket, England, in 1842, A man claimed this encounter with fairies when walking through a meadow on his journey home. There might have been a dozen of them, the biggest about 3 feet high, and small ones like dolls. They were moving around hand in hand in a ring. No noise came from them at all. They seemed light and shadowy, not like solid bodies. I could see them as plain as I do you. I ran home and called 3 other women to come back with me to see them, but when we got to the place, they were all gone. I was quite sober at the time. I learned that a bored young boy playing along a creek near Bend, Oregon, saw 2 little people who crossed the creek and stood looking at him. He said they were no more than 15 to 18 inches high and very dark complected. They wore skins as garments, and after a period of 10 to 15 seconds, walked back across the creek and into the forest. The boy showed their footprints to his parents, who had contracted to a logging company to clean up slash piles. The prints were obvious and his parents were flabbergasted, but chose not to follow the little beings into the woods. He believes now that the little men weren't happy about the logging and destruction of the forest. The last time I saw the little people was around 1957 in Fort Worth, Texas. I had been sleeping and something made me open my eyes. I saw 2 people looking back at me. I was too tired and sleepy at the time to pursue further investigation of these 2 little guys who had very little hair and wore shabby, strange clothes. They sort of smiled at me, and I fell back to sleep. I know what I saw, and they were real. Last year, when my daughter and friends were 4-wheeling in the woods in Washington State, they were stuck and having problems getting out. When working at getting out, an elf-like person came out and looked at them. The elf had a bow and arrow, pointed hat, and pointed ears. 6 people saw it. Daniel heard a curious story from his Uncle Willie. At the time, Willie was a young man in his early 30s. He was riding on his horse along one of the many natural springs in the area and stopped to roll himself a cigarette and rest for a while. As he stood by the water, he heard a strange scraping sound, and curious that it might be an animal, he crept to the grass along the small stream. Upon pushing the reeds apart, he looked on 2 strange little figures that were no taller than a man's fist. One came out of the water while the other sat alongside the stream. The one sitting seemed to be scraping something in his hands. When Willie realized what he was seeing was real, the awareness brought about the awareness of the small people, who froze in their tracks. As Willie pushed through the grass towards them for a better look, one figure dropped to one side and fell into the water, disappearing, even though this small stream of water was no more than an inch or 2 deep. The other produced a small leather pouch, out of which he took several old arrowheads, and with these was the tool which produced the scraping noise that he heard. It was a tiny stone knife, and he also kept the crayfish claw the creatures were trying to open when Willie happened along. So what are little people? It's kind of hard to say. When I hear stories of fairies and stuff, I have a knee-jerk reaction. I kind of scoff at them and roll my eyes at them, but I've met people who've seen them, and I can't really discount their sightings. Maybe it's possible that something little has an intellect like us, but it's kind of hard to say. Like, when they find the Homo floresiensis skeletons, their prefrontal cortex was as developed as ours. Ravens and crows of the corvid family also have large developed brains. Their brain to body size ratio is similar to humans. And since a little person's brain is so small but their prefrontal cortex is highly developed and they found copper tools with them, it makes me think that intelligence isn't really based on brain size but more of a soul to body connection of some sort, or a highly developed prefrontal cortex. And I've also heard of stories of humans with congenital defects where their brains will be, one guy was born with a kind of a hollow brain, and his brain tissue is only along the outer rims of his, and with an empty skull basically. And he functioned like a normal human. So how much brain matter do we need in order to actually be intelligent beings? Is intelligence more based on a soul to body connection, or is it dependent upon brain size. Because if it's completely dependent upon brain size, then elephants and whales should be far superior to us in terms of intelligence. And we should be superior to little people in terms of intelligence. But apparently they have sophisticated technology and abilities that we don't understand. So either brain size isn't really an issue for intelligence, or there's some kind of weird hyperdense neural density thing going on with these other creatures. I'm kind of going on a little tangent here. Anyway, the little people, obviously there's different types. I want to cover more stories and delve into the possibility of these little fairies and other type creatures. But honestly, I feel like so many people in the paranormal field aren't very intelligent, and there's no quality control. So there's a lot of really stupid theories and ideas out there that maybe they're true, they just seem stupid to me. But sometimes I have people send me photos of little people and Bigfoot, and it's just a dark photo with pixels. Like literally, a person sent me a photo of a wet leaf on the ground with a cigarette butt, and was like, look, a gnome. And I was like, dude, you're wasting my time, man. Like, pareidolia, dark pixelated photos, people see what they want to see, and there's some extremely gullible people out there. And for sure, this genre and this field attracts a lot of extremely gullible people. So sometimes I don't know what to think. Like, are these people delusional or low IQ and they're just seeing what they want to see, or are these things actually real? So I try to filter out the truth by looking at commonalities, common factors that are prevalent in many cultures and that repeat in many stories, like the Bigfoot phenomenon. Some people have wild stories about them that falls outside the realms of what I know, and if it's just one case like that, I kind of discount it. But if I hear it multiple times from multiple people, I start to kind of take a double take and wonder if possibly that's real. What I'm doing in the paranormal study is I'm trying to kind of look at it more logically and scientifically. And I believe that shamanism and these things that seem like magic to us with these strange beings are actually something that can be explained. We're just kind of in the age of darkness right now. But one day we'll be advanced enough where it'll all make sense, and it will seem stupid that primitive people of our age thought it was fake. And like Carl Sagan said, or Sagan or whatever his name is, he said that an advanced technology or an advanced civilization, it would seem like magic to primitive people. So when we hear telekinesis, which I've done personally before, so I know it's real, when we hear of psychic communication, things that can go invisible, parallel realities in different worlds, maybe it's all real. Maybe we're just ignorant. And one day we'll look back at the age of stupidity, which is now, and they'll be laughing about how ignorant we were, thinking it was all fake. All of human knowledge is like a little drop of water in a sea, and like an ocean of information. And what we know is a little sphere, and outside of the sphere of what we understand is the unknown, the hazy, infinite unknown. So to roll your eyes at things that we don't understand is kind of ignorant. People have done it in the past, people will continue to do it in the future. So to try to keep an open mind, but not stupidly, if you get what I'm saying. Anyway, I'll be making more videos now that I set my studio up, and I'll be working on trying to find ways to make money doing YouTube. So until next time, subscribe, share the channel. I hate it when people ask me, hey, can I share your video? Like, yeah, share it. Share it on all the things you can. In fact, sharing it is going to help me because it'll get the word out more, so I can get more stories. So right now I have like scant stories. My email has like a few hundred emails. Some people write these novels that are obviously fake, that are written by an author, like, it was a beautiful amber sunset, and I took a deep breath with the mist. Like, shut up. Like, that is not an encounter story. That's the freaking author trying to write fiction and get his name out there or whatever. That kind of stuff annoys the hell out of me. Anyway, share your stories with me. Share the videos. Subscribe. Hit the bell icon because I'm gonna keep producing more videos. And stay tuned for more. This is Kit TV Talk signing out again.